Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nicholas Rivas. I talk about politics and stuff, and today we're going to be talking about Mama Luigi. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're going to be talking about a fun topic today, the prison system. So I saw a tweet recently I found completely by myself with no help of my partner. So I take full credit of this. There was a tweet from, I think, the Arizona Department of Corrections Services, whatever the hell they call themselves, where they have admitted to uh, you can't get rid of any privatized prisons because a certain group of people would be affected by the loss of the cheap labor. You hear that, and if this was like the 80s, that would be like the most admission of guilt. Like, oh, that's what many anti-private prison activists were pushing for. That's what many left-wing candidates were saying. Like, we can't have these private prisons. The cheap labor, from making the license plates to fighting fires, is cruel, unusual punishment. And many have laughed. Many we know we got to punish the prisoners. They're little bad boys. They've done wrong. So hearing this should be some sort of like ratified feeling, like we were justified in pushing for. And obviously, I wasn't alive during the 80s and 90s when the whole Clinton administration and Biden team pushed for the incarceration of black and brown people through what they call broken window policy, basically just policing crime-ridden areas more than usual, right? A very systematic oppression. It seems very surface level good. Of course, if there's crime in one area, send a lot of cops. Like, that was the initial thought, but it was found that even before the 80s, that the reason these places were affected was because of lack of education, lack of funding for their education, racist police, stigmatized culture for said black and brown communities. Like, there was scientific ways to go about this rather than just send police over there, which is what they call broken window policing, where police would just see crime, go there, and react to it. Like, no shit, more black and brown people were being arrested because they went to those places and over policed. So many of crime and law specialists have been shouting from the rooftops that this is wrong, and many of people said no, it's right. And this whole time when we were having what to believe a good faith debate, many of other critics said no, they don't care that this is right or wrong. They don't care statistically that if you were to fund education, you would see a drop in this crime. If you were to make college education free for at least a black and brown impoverished community, you would see a crime go down, right? They didn't care about that. All of that statistics, all of that smart talk, all of that logical, critical thinking was never the point. They wanted cheap labor. It's the same ordeal when we talk about the war in Afghanistan. For 20 years, people were saying that we are there for oil. And the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and of course before, when we were in the Gulf, when we were fucking with people in Nicaragua, we were there for a malintent. But many of the opposition said, no, 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 we're there to do democracy. So that's the point, is throughout all of this time, throughout all of this good faith debate from those who said that this is how you stop the rise of black and brown crime, this is how you better our society, it was nothing. Because this tweet basically said, you get rid of private prisons, you give away our cheap labor. It was about the cheap labor the whole time. Like, we really unmasked the Scooby-Doo villain. It was the goddamn gardener the whole time. And all the kids who were saying this were looked at as crazy. And that's the whole point. These people don't have or want a good faith debate with you. They want profit. When the Trump administration was pushing for the lack of knowledge of COVID, they weren't doing it because they really love COVID. Like, no one's a pro-viruser. No, there's profit. I have to shut down the economy. I have to pay people stimulus tax. Like, you have to do things which would lose your profit, lose your donors, lose your lobbyists. It's the age-old grade A, works in the past forever. We've always done this, where profits have overseen everything, and we try to mask it with these lobbyists or these donors who say, oh, it's actually not that. I mean, that's the whole climate change debate, is there's layers of studies that prove The CO2 emission is worsening in our world. The food that we eat is worsening our world. The cattle we poison with genetic mutation is ruining our world. All of these people backing, here's why we've done a study, we've had a fair sample size that gets thrown out the window because someone goes, but what about the profits? That's the whole point. They don't care about you. They never do. And the prison system is the prime example. When you look at countries like China, bear in mind, many of a right-wing critic would call China a authoritarian state, which I would agree. Some would call it a prison state, which I would agree. You can't go to Hong Kong and protest without being thrown in prison. Wow, how utilitarian, or not, how authoritarian. Yet, we have the largest prison population per capita and just overall. Like, the most prisoners in the world is the United States. And when you still resize it for per capita, we are still beating Russia, Brazil, India, and China combined, baby. Those motherfuckers have more people than our fucking worst, like, best or most populated place. They are shitting on us in their driven for a utilitarian society. Yet we are brainwashed to say our prison system is, at least we're not Bulgaria, right? Like, we're some random country. They've succeeded in this. We look at our prison system and think it's pretty top notch. I mean, to be fair, I don't know anybody who likes the prison system, but we look at it and go, well, at least we're not, like, I remember hearing this growing up, well, at least we're not a prison in Africa or some shit like that, where people would hear, the conditions of their prison, but their likelihood of you going to prison in these, like, third world countries was very low, whereas here you could just be speeding over the limit by, I think, 25, and that's a felony. You could get prison time. The sheer amount of people heading to prison in our country is baffling. And of course, if you're black, brown, or whatever, you're gonna have a higher percentage. In Arizona, Tucson, I'll be specific, where I'm fucking from, there is a statistic of black and brown people going to prison for drug-related charges, and I think it's like 21% of those incarcerations were black people. We have like 1% population of black people in the whole state, right? And Tucson, we have like, probably less than, right? We have like 1%, yet they made up 21%. That's the systematic oppression that we speak about. We're not just saying systematic oppression just to say it. The idea that population is so low, yet it makes up the majority of our prison sentences, especially for stuff like weed. If it was murder, you can be like, well, murder is it's a hard measure to scale, right? Like, murder's murder. There's no way you cannot go to jail for that. It's very rare you don't. But for weed, a lot of times, many weed charges are dropped or not even given because a lot of white affluent areas are given a slap on the wrist, whereas a black and brown person, even with the smallest amount, is treated as if a felony. During the arrest, the imprisonment and actual sentencing is this whole battle, of course, but to think about how many black and brown people are just arrested on drug charges is already a uneven scale. You're already putting the odds. Like, if you arrest 5 people and 3 of them were black, of course the likelihood of them all going to jail is higher because just the sheer number. The more black people we're arresting, the more of chances. Our prison system isn't perfect. I'm not asking for an abolishment of prisons, but there needs to be a restructuring, especially too if you take into account, going back to our original point of, in the 80s and 90s, people were calling this, they were saying this, the broken window policing is not working, yada yada. We can even go further back and talk about how the prison system in general and the police system in general was made to capture slaves. Like, the first police departments were slave capturers. So there's obviously a built-in racist mindset within these systems, and it's not saying that every police officer is racist inherently. No, I think there's a very good point to make when you think of critical race theory, when you think of the systematic oppression. There is arguments to be made that it's hard not to be racist in a police system that's, built from racism. I'm not denying that, but I think it's hard to argue against that when you have people in police within our communities who are trying to do our best. And I think we need to put those people on pedestals and also just change the structure itself. This requires deep, deep change. And you can't have a milquetoast president like Biden or a whack-ass Congress and Senate who are scared to do anything center, let alone left wing. So yeah, you need deep restructuring, and the sad truth is I can't see a world where that occurs within our current administration, and definitely in the opposition administration. The Trump administration was working great on letting out drug offenders. That was one of the best things Trump did. And all of his critics, like if you were to ask a Republican poll, they would say that Trump's releasing of the nonviolent drug offenders was his worst thing. His worst thing was one of the greatest things I've seen a president do in such a long time. He released, I think, the lady who was caught. She was like a big drug seller, but she never did anything violent. I mean, in her proximity, right? I mean, there's arguments that could be made that selling drugs alone is a indirect violence causer, right? But besides that, she was a nonviolent drug offender on her system, on her record. And so Trump let her out with the help of, I think, Kanye and Kim. That was the one Kanye and Kim were pushing for, trying to get her to be released. And Trump did it. That's something Obama was even being written about. I remember celebrities, I think Common was saying we need to let this woman out because she was, I think she was selling weed and she got 40 years. I think that was the actual sentencing. And I think it was like less than like a few pounds, right? Whereas there's people who sell like pounds and pounds of crack and they get like 10 or 15. I'm not saying they should get 40. It's odd that she got it. And I think it's because her story was pretty tragic. I think she was like a mother trying to sell weed for her kid or something and like get him through school because they couldn't eat. It was a crazy. There's a reason why she was picked, but for one of her, there's many of her, right? And I think, in effect, if you are to continue this pardoning of nonviolent drug offenders, many within the system would go, why are we even arresting these people? So you got to take it incremental steps. You have to take it with the idea, for one, legalization of drugs or the decriminalization of drugs. The DEA needs to be shifted into, I would say, drug trafficking, sex trafficking. Like, use our resources that we currently have. Like ICE should have a full direct change to focus on sex trade. You have the resources, you have the power, you even have the same proximity, a border of people going through in and out of the country for sex trade. Bam, bam, there you go, your solution. $1 million idea, take it. I won't even charge. So yeah, I think this just needs to be restructuring. We already have the societal pillars to do so, and that's all it is. But, I'm just a crazy lefty. Even with the admission of guilt from the Department of Corrections, we still are being looked at like it was for the children. We were doing this for the children. Like they'll never admit the guilt. They'll admit themselves for the crime they did, but it's not bad. We had to do it. We had to punish these black people. And so yeah, that's why I don't see any change soon, but it will. There's no way a society can continue like this and continue to discriminate so, obviously. So yeah, it is what it is. Thank you so much. Have a good one. New videos every other day, and Papa bless.
You're the sole survivor. Honor your comrade's sacrifice. We have them on the run. Keep pushing. Don't let them regroup.
Enemy up here.
Switching rally points. Defend the objectives.
Spy plane in the turn. We have eyes on.
Hostile RCXD in your AO.
Spy plane below 50%. Check.
Survivors return for debrief. This won't be pretty.
Moving to Kasavak Point.